My client's SMART goal is to increase his weight on a hex bar deadlift from 365 pounds for 3 reps to 415 pounds for 3 reps in 6 weeks' time to maximize his force production while sprinting. We are in week 3 of our 6-week progression. We will start with the warm-up and then go into our strength workout. We will be focusing on day 2. The first part of our warm-up will be to foam roll the calves, quads, IT band, hamstring, glutes, lats, and lower back. Foam rolling is for myofascial release to increase blood flow and release tension relationship between joints and muscles that will be used during the workout. First, we will foam roll the calves right above the Achilles tendon to behind the knee. Now we will foam roll the quads, rolling from the VMO all the way to the TFL. Next, we will hit the IT band, rolling from your knee all the way to your hip. Now we will hit the glutes and the hamstrings. Lastly, we will roll out the lats and lower back. This is the lats. Now we will get into locomotion, which is a series of movement patterns to increase the core temperature. My client will first jog and then backpedal 15 yards, lateral shuffle and lateral karaoke for 15 yards, and then bear crawl forward and backwards for 5 yards. Jog, backpedal, lateral shuffle, lateral karaoke, bear crawls, forward, and back. Next, we'll move into our dynamic flex. This is to mobilize and activate the different muscle groups in all 3 planes of motion: sagittal, frontal, and transverse. My client will perform SFT squats, SFT hip drivers, and SFT push-ups. With our squats, we will do this by adjusting foot placement. The first will be split stance, wide, narrow, toes in, and toes out. Now we will do SFT push-ups. With this, we will adjust our hand placement with our right hand forward, then our left hand forward, wide, narrow, hands facing in, and hands facing out. Last, we will do our SFT hip drivers for our core activation. First, we will drive the hips on the sagittal plane, then the frontal plane, and last, our transverse plane. Now we will finish up this portion of the warm-up with lateral band walks for our glute activation, going 5 yards, and back. The first exercise in today's rotation is the hex bar deadlift. We will start with a light warm-up, assessing the client's technique. This will prepare him to work up to 90% of his 3-rep max since he is in week 3 of our 6-week progression, by doing 2 sets of 10 at 135 pounds. So we want to make sure that the client is in a base stance position with the feet right under the hips and the toes facing forward. As he lowers to grab the bar, we want to make sure that the hips are hinged, the chest is up, and the spine is neutral. To start the lift, we want to make sure there is no slack in the arms, cueing the client not to jerk on the bar, but to progressively push the ground away while extending the hips forward and standing tall. Once the client is in this position, you want to be sure to reiterate the importance of sitting it down exactly how they picked it up. In this phase of the progression, the client is doing 3 sets of 4 reps at 90%, finishing with the last set at 95% for 2 reps. There will be 2 to 3 minutes rest in between each set. Now we will go into our dumbbell bench press of 3 sets of 5 reps. The client will lay on the bench, making sure to utilize the 5-point contact principle. This principle is a good way to check your exercise form and ensure that the bench supports your spine and lower back. As they lower the weight, make sure it is at a controlled tempo, aligning the dumbbells right across the pectorals. Then press back to a neutral position. The last portion of the first block is our 3D hip rocks. We will be performing the warrior stretch. As muscles fatigue, they tend to tighten, which can cause a lack of mobility when performing the strength exercises. So we want to mobilize the hip to maintain mobility throughout the sets. Now getting into our 3D hip rocks of the warrior stretch. In our sagittal plane, we will drive our hips forward, rocking back and forth. In our frontal plane, rocking the hips from side to side, and then moving in a circular motion. After finishing our first strength block, we will go into our second block, which consists of seated rows. With seated rows, you want to focus on pulling with the scap first, then following through with the arms. This is an upper body pull to balance out our upper body push. Lastly, we have our ab wheel rollouts to dynamically strengthen the core. This completes day 2's workout of our week 3 program. My client finished with a foam rolling cool down, making sure to foam roll his calves, quads, hamstring, IT band, glute, lats, and lower back.